hell is this?
Patricia Caldwell stood on the porch, her nose twitching, her face contorted with disgust.
These black people are grilling their filthy garbage right in a decent neighborhood. Like cockroaches at a picnic.
She watched the black man flipping a rib in the backyard. A smirk played on her lips.
Garbage. Utter garbage. They not only devalue this place, but also pollute the air we breathe.
She snatched the phone from the stand.
911? There's a black man in the next yard. He's setting the house on fire. I need someone here immediately.
The man heard every word, every syllable. He didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even lift his head. He simply flipped the rib and smiled. That smile made the woman kneel down and beg for his forgiveness. 6:15 on a Saturday morning, Charlotte, North Carolina. The sun hadn't fully broken through yet, but Malcolm Ingram was already awake. Old habit. 20 years of early mornings will do that to a man. He stood in the kitchen, barefoot, pouring coffee into a chipped mug that read, "World's Okayest Grandpa." The house was quiet. Denise was still asleep. The grandkids wouldn't arrive until noon. He carried his coffee to the back porch and looked out at the yard. 14 years in this house. He'd laid every stone on that patio himself, built the grill station with his own hands, planted the rose bushes along the fence because Denise once mentioned she liked the smell. Maplecrest Lane was the kind of street where people waved from their driveways, trimmed hedges, clean sidewalks, upper middle class, mostly white. The Ingrams were one of 3 black families on the block. It never bothered Malcolm. He wasn't here to prove anything. He was here because he loved the house, loved the yard, loved the quiet. Gerald Eastwood, 2 doors down, white, pushing 70, had been Malcolm's neighbor since the beginning. They shared beers on weekends. Gerald borrowed Malcolm's lawnmower every spring. Malcolm borrowed Gerald's ladder every fall. It was simple. It was good. Then, 6 months ago, Patricia Caldwell moved in next door. And nothing was simple anymore. Week 2, January. Denise was walking the dog past Patricia's driveway. She smiled and waved. "Hi there, I'm Denise. We're right next door." Patricia looked her up and down. Slow, deliberate, like she was inspecting something on the bottom of her shoe. "You're the housekeeper over there?" Denise blinked. She was a pediatric surgeon. 15 years of saving children's lives. "No, I'm the homeowner." Patricia turned and walked inside without another word. February. Malcolm hired 2 painters to redo the backyard fence, both black, both licensed and insured. Patricia called the police within an hour. 2 suspicious black males are vandalizing property on Maplecrest Lane. The officers arrived. The painters showed their work contract, signed by Malcolm, dated, stamped. The officers left. Patricia stood on her porch watching them go, arms crossed. No apology. Not a word. March. Elijah, Malcolm's son, drove down from D.C. for a weekend visit. He pulled into the driveway at 9 p.m. Still wearing his suit from the law firm. He was reaching into the trunk for his bag when the porch light next door snapped on. "Hey, what are you doing over there? I'm calling the cops." Elijah froze. His hands were full. A garment bag in one, a bottle of wine in the other. "Ma'am, I'm their son. I'm visiting my parents." "Prove it." Denise heard the yelling, rushed outside, and hugged her son right there in the driveway, under Patricia's porch light, under Patricia's stare. The door next door slammed shut. No apology, not a word. April. Maya, 8 years old, braids, gap-toothed smile, was bouncing a ball in the front yard. It rolled across the grass and into Patricia's lawn. Maya ran to grab it. The front door flew open. "Get off my property! Don't you dare step on my grass! Tell your people to teach you some manners!" Maya burst into tears and ran inside. Malcolm walked next door, knocked calmly. Patricia cracked the door 3 inches. "Ma'am, she's 8. It was a ball." "I'd appreciate. I have nothing to say to you. Keep your kids on your side." The door shut. May. A formal complaint landed at the HOA office, filed by Patricia Caldwell. Contents: the Ingram family causes chronic noise disturbances, parks vehicles improperly, and diminishes the area's property values. The HOA investigated. Every claim baseless. The board president called Patricia directly. Her response: "You'll regret it when this street turns into a slum." Early June. Denise noticed it first. A security camera, newly mounted on Patricia's house, pointed directly into the Ingrams' backyard. Not at the street, not at Patricia's own yard, at theirs. "She's watching us," Denise said quietly. Malcolm looked at the camera. Then he looked at his wife. "I won't give anyone the power to drag us down, Denise. Not anyone." He went back to seasoning his ribs. Saturday was coming. That Saturday had started like every other. Malcolm had been up since dawn, prepping his dry rub. Brown sugar, smoked paprika, garlic powder, a pinch of cayenne. His secret ratio. Took him years to perfect it. He rubbed the racks slow, methodical, the way a man does when he's not in a rush and doesn't plan to be. By noon, the charcoal was glowing white. The grill grate was hot enough to sizzle on contact. Malcolm laid the first rack down, and the smoke rose thick and sweet, curling up through the warm June air like a slow exhale. Denise came out the back door carrying a glass pitcher of lemonade, ice cubes clinking against the sides. She set it on the patio table and kissed Malcolm on the cheek. "Smells like heaven out here." "Wait till you taste it." Maya and her cousins arrived at 12:30. Car doors slamming, sneakers slapping pavement. The screen door banging open and shut as the kids ran through the house and spilled into the backyard like water from a broken dam. Maya went straight for the swing set. Her braids flew behind her. Her laughter carried across the yard, bright and clean and full of nothing but Saturday. Gerald Eastwood was sitting on his own porch 2 doors down. He lifted his coffee mug toward Malcolm's yard and hollered, "Smelling real good over there, Malcolm. Am I getting an invite or what?" Malcolm pointed the tongs at him. "Bring your own chair, old man." Gerald laughed. Malcolm laughed. Denise shook her head and smiled. For exactly 11 more minutes, everything was perfect. Then the sirens came. Not loud at first, just a low wail in the distance, getting closer. Then the crunch of tires slowing on asphalt. Then the flash, blue and red, bouncing off the front windows of Malcolm's house like a strobe light at a funeral. Denise saw it first. She was inside refilling the lemonade when the colors hit the kitchen wall. Her hands stopped mid-pour. The pitcher hovered over the sink. She didn't need to look outside to know what was happening. She'd been black in America long enough to recognize that light. 2 officers stepped out of the patrol car. Officer Brian Tate, young, white, stiff-backed, hand already resting on his belt like it lived there. Officer Sandra Hollins, biracial, mid-30s, calmer, eyes already scanning the scene like she was reading a book she'd read before. Patricia was already at the curb. She must have been watching from the window because she was outside before the officers had both feet on the pavement. "Thank God you're here. Thank God." She was breathless, performing, hands trembling just enough to look scared, but not enough to look crazy. Her voice pitched high, fragile, rehearsed. "He's been out there for over an hour, burning things. The smoke is unbearable. I don't feel safe. I'm a woman living alone. Tate nodded. Professional. Serious. Can you describe the individual, ma'am? Black male, large build, in the backyard. I've never seen him before. I don't think he lives here. She'd lived next to Malcolm for 6 months. Hollins glanced at the house. Well-kept craftsman, rose bushes, a mailbox with Ingram painted in clean white letters. She said nothing, but her jaw tightened. Patricia pointed toward the side gate. That way, through there, please hurry. The officers walked up the driveway. Tate unlatched the side gate without knocking on the front door, without ringing the bell, without asking permission to enter private property. They walked into Malcolm Ingram's backyard like they owned it. Malcolm was mid-flip on a rack of ribs when he saw them. 2 officers, uniforms, weapons on hips, standing in his yard, between his rose bushes and his grandchildren's swing set. He looked up. His expression didn't change. Not surprise, not fear, something older and more tired than both. Recognition. He'd seen that look on officers' faces before. The look that says, "We've already decided what you are before you open your mouth." "Sir," Tate's voice was clipped, "we received a call about a disturbance at this address. Do you live here?" Malcolm set the tongs down carefully on the edge of the grill. "I do. 14 years. Can I see some ID? Am I being detained, officer?" Tate hesitated. His hand shifted on his belt. "We just need to verify. Am I suspected of a crime?" Silence. The charcoal popped. A kid laughed from the swing set. Somewhere behind them, Patricia's breathing was the loudest thing on the block. Holland stood slightly behind Tate. Her eyes moved from the grill to the patio table to the pitcher of lemonade to the children playing on the swing. She saw what this was. Every single detail screamed it. But she didn't speak up. Not yet. From the sidewalk, Patricia's voice cut through like a rusty nail. "See? He won't show ID. That tells you everything you need to know." Denise stepped onto the back porch. She'd been watching from the kitchen door. Her phone was already in her hand, not recording yet, but ready. "Officers, this is our home. I'm his wife. Our name is on the mailbox. Our name is on the deed. Our name is on every utility bill inside that house." Tate looked at Denise, then back at Malcolm. The situation was clear to anyone with eyes willing to see it. "Sir, if you could just show us an ID, we can clear this up real quick." Malcolm held the officer's gaze for a long moment. Then he turned to Denise. Their eyes met. A conversation without words that only 30 years of marriage can produce. He went inside, came back with his driver's license, handed it over without a word. Tate looked at it. The address matched, the name matched, the photo matched, everything matched. It should have ended right there. A simple confirmation, a quick apology, a walk back to the car. But Patricia Caldwell was not finished. "That could be fake," she called from the curb, her voice louder now, sharper. "Or maybe he's renting, or squatting. You don't actually know." She walked closer, uninvited, onto Malcolm's front lawn, her shoes pressed into the grass he mowed every Sunday. "I want them to search the property. I've smelled chemicals coming from that backyard for weeks, not normal barbecue. Chemicals. Something is not right in that house." Chemicals. The word hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Malcolm looked at Patricia. Standing on his grass, on his property, accusing him of manufacturing drugs in the home where his grandchildren were playing at that very moment. He said nothing. Gerald Eastwood stood up from his porch 2 doors down. "Patricia, what in God's name are you talking about? That man has lived here longer than I have. Those are ribs on that grill, not a meth lab. Patricia didn't even turn around. Mind your business, Gerald. Tate looked at the ID again, looked at the house, looked at Patricia, looked back at Malcolm. He was stuck in the middle of something he didn't have the training or the experience to navigate. Hollins finally spoke. Quiet. Just to Tate. Barely above a whisper. The ID matches, Brian. Everything checks out. But the call was logged. The complaint was on record. And Patricia Caldwell was still talking. Are you going to do your jobs or not? Because if something happens to me tonight, it's on your heads. Both of you. Tate clipped the license back and handed it to Malcolm. His fingers were stiff. Sir, would you mind if we just took a quick look around the backyard? Just to be thorough, then we'll be out of your way. Malcolm took his ID back, slid it into his back pocket, looked Tate dead in the eyes. No. The word sat there like a locked door. I've shown you my identification. My wife has confirmed my residence. My neighbor has confirmed my residence. You have no probable cause. You have no warrant, and you do not have my consent to search my property. Every word landed clean. No anger, no volume, just precision. Tate opened his mouth, closed it. Patricia's voice again, shrill now, climbing higher with every word. He's hiding something. An innocent person would just let them look. Malcolm picked up his tongs, turned back to the grill, flipped a rib with steady hands. I'm done answering questions, officer. You're welcome to leave the way you came in. For a moment, it looked like it might actually end there. Tate seemed ready to turn around. Hollins was already half turned toward the gate. The charcoal hissed. A breeze moved through the yard. Then, Tate reached for his radio. Dispatch, requesting a supervisor at Maple Crest Lane. We have an uncooperative resident. Uncooperative. A man grilling ribs in his own backyard. A man who showed his ID. A man who answered every question, whose wife confirmed everything, whose neighbor confirmed everything, whose address matched, whose name was on the mailbox, and the word they chose was uncooperative. Denise's thumb pressed record. The supervisor arrived in under 6 minutes. A second patrol car rolled onto Maple Crest Lane, slower than the first. No sirens this time. Just the low rumble of an engine and the quiet crackle of a radio, turned down, but not off. The neighborhood dogs started barking. A curtain moved in a window across the street. The block was waking up to something it hadn't asked for. Sergeant Dale Whitmore stepped out. Big man, broad shoulders, aviator sunglasses pushed up onto his forehead even though the sun was behind the trees. He adjusted his belt with both hands, the kind of gesture that wasn't about comfort. It was about making sure you saw what hung on that belt. He didn't look at the house number, didn't read the mailbox, didn't check the notes on his radio. He walked straight up the driveway like a man who'd already written the ending before he read the first page. Patricia intercepted him at the sidewalk. Her voice had shifted now, no longer shrill, controlled, strategic. She'd had time to rehearse. Sergeant, thank you for coming. The man in that backyard has been hostile and aggressive with your officers. He refused to cooperate. He refused to search. He's hiding something. I know it. I've been living next to these people for 6 months, and something has never been right about that house. These people. That house. 6 months of watching. 6 months of calling. And still, not once had she knocked on their door and introduced herself like a neighbor. Whitmore gave her a single nod. Not sympathetic, just acknowledging. Like a man checking a box on a form. He walked through the side gate without stopping, without asking. Tate and Hollins were still standing in the backyard. Malcolm was at the grill, his back half turned, flipping ribs like the world wasn't tightening around him, inch by inch. Whitmore didn't introduce himself, didn't greet Denise, didn't acknowledge the sound of children's laughter still drifting faintly from the far end of the yard. He walked straight up to Malcolm and stopped about 2 feet away, close enough to smell the charcoal, close enough to crowd, close enough to make the space between them feel like a wall. "All right, what's the problem here, big guy?" Big guy. Malcolm turned slowly, tongs still in hand. He looked at Whitmore the way a man looks at a storm he saw coming from miles away but couldn't outrun. "There's no problem, Sergeant. I've already provided my identification. It matches this address. My wife has confirmed I live here. My neighbor has confirmed I live here. There's nothing left to discuss." Whitmore tilted his head. A half smile crawled across his face. The kind that doesn't reach the eyes. The kind that says, "I'm giving you a chance to make this easy." "Well, see, that's not really your call, is it? I got a report about suspicious activity, possible chemicals. I got to take that seriously." "There are no chemicals here. This is a barbecue." "That's what you say, but the complainant says different, and I got a duty to investigate." "You have a duty to follow the law, Sergeant, and the law says you need probable cause or a warrant to search private property. You have neither." The half-smile dropped, gone, like someone flipped a switch. Whitmore stepped closer, not by much, just enough to push the line from uncomfortable to threatening. His chest was inches from Malcolm's. His shadow fell across the grill, across the ribs, across everything Malcolm had built in this backyard with his own 2 hands. "You don't get to tell me what I need." His right hand drifted to his belt, not on the weapon, just beside it, resting there, patient, waiting. The air in the yard changed. You could feel it, like the temperature dropped 10 degrees in a single breath. The kids on the swing set had gone quiet. Maya had stopped mid-swing, her feet dragging through the dirt beneath her. She was watching. They were all watching. Denise held her phone steady. The red recording dot blinked in the corner of the screen. "I'm recording this, Sergeant." Whitmore turned his head toward her, slow, irritated, like a man swatting at a fly he didn't think deserved the effort. "Ma'am, put the phone down and go inside. Now." "No." I said put it down. And I said no. I have a legal right to record interactions with law enforcement on my own property. Whitmore stared at her for a long beat. His jaw tightened. Then he turned back to Malcolm, dismissed her entirely. Like her voice, her rights, her presence in her own home meant absolutely nothing. "Here's what's going to happen," Whitmore said, his voice dropping low and flat. "I'm going to conduct a welfare check inside the home. Make sure nobody in there is in danger. That's well within my authority." "No, it's not," Malcolm said. His voice hadn't risen once, not a single decibel. "A welfare check requires reasonable belief that someone inside is in immediate danger. You have no such belief. You have a neighbor's baseless complaint and the smell of barbecue." Whitmore leaned in, close enough that Malcolm could see the coffee stain on his collar, close enough that Malcolm could smell the spearmint gum on his breath, close enough that the threat didn't need words anymore. "You keep talking like a lawyer, you're going to start being treated like a problem. I suggest you step aside and let me do my job before this gets complicated." From the sidewalk, Patricia's voice sailed over the fence like kerosene on a fire. "Just go in already. I guarantee you'll find something. People like them always have something to hide." People like them. Gerald Eastwood had moved from his porch to the edge of his driveway. His face was red from the neck up. His hands were trembling at his sides. Not from fear, from fury. "Sergeant, this is insane. That man is Malcolm Ingram. He's lived on this street for 14 years. I've known him longer than I've known my own brother. There is nothing illegal happening in that yard." Whitmore didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge Gerald's existence, just kept his eyes locked on Malcolm, like the rest of the world had been muted. "Sir, I'm going to ask you one more time. Step away from the door." Malcolm was standing in front of his own back door, his back porch, his house. He wasn't blocking it with aggression. He was simply standing where any homeowner in America would stand on a Saturday afternoon. And a man with a badge was telling him to move. "If you don't step aside, I will consider that obstruction of a law enforcement officer, and that, sir, is an arrestable offense." Arrestable. For standing in front of his own door, in his own yard, on his own property, while his grandchildren watched from the window above. And that's when Malcolm saw them. Maya was on the second floor, her face pressed against the glass, her small hand flat against the window. Not waving, not playing, not calling out, just pressed there, fingers spread, like she was trying to reach through the glass and pull her grandfather inside where it was safe. Her eyes were wide and wet. Her bottom lip was trembling. She didn't understand what was happening. She just knew that police were in her grandfather's yard, and everyone was angry, and no one was smiling, and everything felt wrong in a way she didn't have words for yet. Next to her, two of her cousins. One had his arms wrapped around the other. The youngest was crying silently, tears running down his cheeks without making a single sound. The kind of crying children do when they're too scared to be loud. Malcolm saw his granddaughter's hand on the glass, and something moved behind his eyes. Not rage, something deeper, something heavier. The weight of a man who had spent his entire life building, every brick, every degree, every late night, every early morning, every sacrifice, and all of it reduced to a phone call from a woman who looked at him and saw nothing but skin. He looked at Whitmore, then at Tate, then at Hollins. "My grandchildren are watching this from the upstairs window right now. My 8-year-old granddaughter is pressing her hand against the glass because she thinks her grandfather is about to be arrested. In his own home, on a Saturday afternoon. She is 8 years old." He paused, let every word settle like a stone dropped into still water. "Is this really how you want this to go?" Whitmore didn't look up, didn't glance of the window, didn't acknowledge the children at all. "Sir, I don't make the rules, I enforce them. Now step aside." Patricia struck the final match. "For God's sake, just arrest him already. I've never felt safe with him living next to me, not one single day." The radio on Whitmore's shoulder crackled with static. He reached for it. His thumb hovered over the transmit button, ready to call for additional units to assist with, in his words, an uncooperative and potentially hostile resident. Malcolm Ingram, homeowner, husband, grandfather. A man who planted roses for his wife and built a swing set for his grandchildren with his own hands. Potentially hostile. Whitmore pressed the button. "Dispatch, I need an additional unit at Maple Crest Lane. Non-compliant individual. Possible escalation." And right at that exact moment, the very second Whitmore's voice crackled through the radio, Malcolm Ingram's phone rang. Malcolm glanced at the screen, a name only a few people in the city would recognize. He answered, "Yes, Claire." A pause. He listened. His expression didn't change, not a flicker, not a twitch. "I see. Thank you. I'll handle it from here." He lowered the phone, slid it into his back pocket, and then he turned to face Sergeant Dale Whitmore with the full weight of 20 years behind the most powerful bench in the district. His voice didn't rise. It dropped. Lower, slower. Each word carved from stone and delivered with the precision of a man who had spent his career making words mean exactly what they were supposed to mean. Sergeant Whitmore, my name is Malcolm Ingram. I am the presiding judge of the United States District Court for the Western District of North Carolina. The yard went silent. Not quiet, silent. The kind of silence that has weight. The kind that presses against your chest and holds you in place. The phone call I just received was from my court clerk. She informed me that this encounter, every word, every action, every threat you have made on my property, is currently being broadcast live on social media. Malcolm looked past Whitmore, past Tate, past Hollins, straight at Gerald Eastwood, who was standing at the edge of his driveway, phone held high, camera facing outward, the red light glowing. Gerald gave a single nod. My neighbor has been live streaming this interaction from the moment your first unit arrived. As of the call I just received, the stream has over 6,000 viewers, and it is climbing. Whitmore's face drained, not slowly, all at once, like someone pulled a plug and every ounce of authority he'd walked in with poured out through the soles of his boots. His back straightened, reflexive, involuntary, the posture of a man who had stood in front of judges before, but never like this. Never in a backyard. Never with the camera already rolling. Tate took a half step backward. His hand fell from his belt. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Hollins closed her eyes. Just for a moment. A slow blink that looked less like surprise and more like confirmation. She had known. She had sensed it from the beginning. And she had said nothing loud enough to stop it. Patricia Caldwell stood frozen on the sidewalk, phone still clutched in her hand. The same hand that had dialed 911. The same hand that had pointed the officers toward Malcolm's gate. Her mouth was open, but her voice was gone. Malcolm took one step forward. Not aggressive, not dramatic, just one step. Enough to close the distance and make sure every word hit where it was meant to hit. Sergeant Whitmore, in the last 25 minutes, you have entered my property without a warrant. You have attempted to conduct a search without probable cause. You have used physical intimidation against a civilian on his own land. You have dismissed a corroborating witness. You have ordered my wife to stop exercising her constitutional right to record. And you have threatened me with arrest for standing in front of my own back door. He paused, let the list hang in the air like a verdict. I have sat on the federal bench for 19 years. I have presided over hundreds of cases involving unlawful search, excessive force, and civil rights violations. I know exactly what happened here today. And more importantly, I know exactly what it's called. Then he turned to Patricia. She was still on the sidewalk. Her legs hadn't moved. Her face was the color of old paper. Ma'am, filing a false police report is a Class 2 misdemeanor in North Carolina. Filing one with racial motivation may result in enhanced charges under state intimidation statutes. You should call an attorney. Patricia's voice came out cracked, thin, like a glass about to shatter. I didn't know. I was just trying to be safe. No, you were not trying to be safe. Malcolm's voice didn't waver, didn't soften, didn't rise. You were trying to remove a black family from a neighborhood you decided we didn't belong in, and you used armed officers to do it. He took another step, not toward her, just into the open, into the space between his yard and hers, into the space where 6 months of silence had lived. In 6 months, you have called the police on my painters. You have screamed at my son in my own driveway. You have reduced my 8-year-old granddaughter to tears over a rubber ball. You have filed baseless complaints with the HOA claiming my family, diminishes this neighborhood. And you mounted a surveillance camera pointed directly into my backyard. Patricia's chin trembled. Her hand tightened around her phone. Today you called 911 and told them I was burning chemicals. You said you'd never seen me before. You said you felt unsafe. Every word of that call was a lie, and every lie is on record. He looked at her the way a judge looks at a defendant who has just heard the charges read aloud and realized for the first time that none of this is going away. This is the last time, Patricia. The very last time. The live stream counter on Gerald's phone ticked past 9,000. Nobody moved for what felt like a full minute. The charcoal popped. The smoke kept rising. Somewhere inside the house, a child was still crying softly. Whitmore was the first to speak. His voice had changed completely. The authority was gone. The swagger was gone. What came out was the voice of a man standing in the wreckage of his own career and trying to find one board still standing. Judge Ingram, we were responding to a call, sir. Standard procedure. We had a complaint, and we followed protocol. Malcolm didn't blink. Protocol does not include entering private property without consent. Protocol does not include ignoring verified identification. Protocol does not include fabricating grounds for a search. And protocol certainly does not include threatening a homeowner with arrest for standing in his own doorway, Sergeant. Whitmore opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing. Holland stepped forward. She removed her body camera, checked the indicator light, still recording, and turned to Tate. Her voice was low, steady. The voice of someone who understood that what happened in the next 5 minutes would follow all of them for the rest of their careers. We need to file this exactly as it happened, Brian. Word for word. No edits, no omissions. Tate nodded. He looked sick. His face had gone from stiff to gray. He took a step toward Malcolm, not close, just enough. Sir, I owe you an apology. I should have ended this at the ID. I should have cleared the call and walked away. I didn't, and I'm sorry. Malcolm looked at him for a long moment. He didn't smile, didn't nod, didn't offer comfort. You should have, but you didn't. And the next person standing in this yard might not be a federal judge, officer. They might just be a man with a grill and no title to protect them. Think about what happens then. Tate dropped his gaze to the ground. He had no answer, because they both knew the answer. On the sidewalk, Patricia was trying to leave. Her legs had finally unlocked, and she was moving toward her front door with quick, sharp steps. Head down, phone pressed against her chest like a shield. Gerald Eastwood cut her off. Not physically. He just stepped to the edge of his driveway and spoke loud enough for the live stream to catch every syllable. 6 months, Patricia. 6 months you've been on this street. And in that time, you've called the police on Malcolm twice. Called code enforcement twice. Screamed at his son. Made his granddaughter cry. Filed a bogus HOA complaint. Pointed a camera into his yard. And not once, not one single time, did you walk next door and knock like a decent human being. Patricia stopped. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes narrowed. And whatever filter she'd been holding onto finally snapped. I don't have to explain myself to anyone. I have a right to feel safe in my own home. And if none of you can see what's happening to this neighborhood, then you're all blind. The live stream caught every word. Gerald's phone didn't waver. The viewer count ticked past 12,000. Denise stepped off the porch. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. The yard was so quiet, her words carried like a bell. My granddaughter is upstairs right now. She's 8 years old. She's sitting on the floor with her hand still pressed against the window because she watched 3 armed officers stand in her grandfather's yard and threaten to arrest him. In his own home, on a Saturday. She doesn't understand what happened. She just knows she's scared. She paused. She's 8. The weight of those 2 words pressed down on the yard like a physical thing. Even Whitmore looked at the ground. Malcolm pulled out his phone. He didn't make a speech, didn't raise his voice. He dialed a number he knew by memory and waited 2 rings. Chief Bennett, this is Judge Malcolm Ingram. I think you'll want to review the body camera footage from Maple Crest Lane before the evening news does. He hung up. Within the hour, the machinery was in motion. Sergeant Dale Whitmore, placed on administrative leave pending a full internal affairs investigation. Officer Brian Tate, reassigned to desk duty, effective immediately. The 911 audio, flagged, pulled, and placed under formal review. Patricia Caldwell stood at her kitchen window, watching the second patrol car pull away from the curb. The street was quiet again. The live stream was over. But for Patricia, everything was just beginning. By Sunday morning, the internet had already made its decision. Gerald Eastwood's live stream, recorded on a phone he'd bought 3 years ago and barely knew how to use, had been clipped, reposted, and shared across every platform that existed. The original stream hit 300,000 views before breakfast. By noon, it crossed 1 million. The comments poured in like a flood no algorithm could contain. Outrage, disbelief, fury. And underneath all of it, a single question repeated thousands of times in thousands of different voices. What would have happened if he wasn't a judge? Local reporter Natalie Dawson was the first to put it on television. Her segment opened with the 911 audio, Patricia's voice, breathy and rehearsed, trembling with manufactured fear. There's a black man in the next yard. He's setting this place on fire. Then the camera cut to Malcolm's backyard, the stone patio he built by hand, the rose bushes along the fence, the swing set. Then a photo of Malcolm in his judicial robe, standing before the American flag at his investiture ceremony. The contrast was surgical. By Monday, every major outlet had picked it up. The headlines wrote themselves. Woman calls police on federal judge for grilling in his own yard. And the one that stuck longest, the one that became a bumper sticker, a t-shirt, and a hashtag trending for 11 straight days. Hashtag Let Malcolm Grill. But the internet's attention was just the surface. Beneath it, the machinery of real accountability was grinding forward. Internal Affairs pulled Whitmore's body camera footage Monday morning, every second reviewed. The findings were damning. He had entered private property without permission, ignored verified identification, fabricated justification for a welfare check with no supporting evidence, used physical proximity as deliberate intimidation, ordered a civilian to stop recording, and called for backup on a man whose only act of resistance was standing still. Then they pulled his personnel file. 6 prior complaints, 3 filed by black residents. 1 involved Whitmore pinning a teenager against a car hood during a traffic stop for a broken taillight. Another involved him forcing a black woman to empty her purse on the sidewalk in front of her children. A third involved entering a home without a warrant while the homeowner was at work. None had resulted in discipline. Not a suspension, not a reprimand, not even a note in his file that anyone had bothered to read. Until now. The DA's office moved next. They subpoenaed Patricia Caldwell's 911 call history, not just from Charlotte, but from her previous address in South Carolina. The pattern was so clear it could have been drawn with a ruler. 16 calls to police in 4 years, 13 of them targeting Black or Latino neighbors. A Black family having a birthday party, excessive noise, possible drug activity. A Latino man washing his car in his own driveway, suspicious individual, possibly casing homes. A Black teenager walking a dog, unidentified male, possibly stolen animal. Not one of those 16 calls had ever resulted in charges against anyone she reported. Not one. Every call was baseless. Every call was a weapon. And every weapon was aimed at the same target. People who didn't look like Patricia Caldwell. The DA filed 2 charges, filing a false police report, Class 2 misdemeanor, and a second charge under North Carolina's ethnic intimidation statutes, based on the documented racial pattern of her conduct. Patricia's attorney pushed hard for a plea deal, quietly, behind closed doors, the kind of arrangement that ends with a fine and everyone agreeing to move on. The DA refused. This case goes to trial. The public deserves to see the evidence. The trial lasted 4 days. The jury heard the 911 audio, watched the live stream footage, reviewed body camera recordings. They heard Gerald Eastwood testify about 6 months of targeted harassment. Heard Denise describe the night Patricia screamed at Elijah in their own driveway. Heard about Maya and the ball. Read the HOA complaint. Saw the surveillance camera angle, pointed not at the street, not at Patricia's own yard, but directly into the Ingram's backyard. And they heard Malcolm Ingram testify. Calm, measured, every fact delivered with the same precision he brought to his courtroom. No anger, no performance, just the truth, laid out brick by brick until the wall was undeniable. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. They came back with a unanimous verdict. Guilty, both counts. The sentencing judge delivered words that would be quoted in every article written about the case for years to come. This court will not treat the weaponization of law enforcement against communities of color as a neighborly misunderstanding. This was not a mistake. This was a pattern, and patterns have consequences. Patricia Caldwell received 18 months of supervised probation, 250 hours of community service, assigned specifically to civil rights organizations serving communities of color, a fine, and a permanent restraining order barring any contact with the Ingram family. She did not speak at sentencing. She stared straight ahead. Her attorney held her arm. Sergeant Dale Whitmore was terminated following the internal affairs investigation. He filed an appeal through the police union. The appeal was denied. His name was added to a statewide database of officers dismissed for misconduct. Officer Brian Tate received a formal reprimand and was required to complete an extended training program on implicit bias and constitutional policing. 3 months later, he voluntarily published an internal memo to the entire department, acknowledging his failure to act and urging fellow officers to intervene when a situation crosses the line, regardless of rank. Chief Harold Bennett held a press conference the following week. He announced a comprehensive review of the department's protocols for responding to suspicious person calls, particularly those lacking any specific description of criminal behavior. The City Council passed a resolution. The press called it the Ingram Resolution. It required 911 dispatchers to ask callers for specific, articulable evidence of criminal activity before dispatching officers to any suspicious person report. If the caller could not provide it, the call would be logged, but no unit would be sent. Malcolm Ingram did not hold a press conference, did not appear on television, did not write an op-ed. He issued one written statement, 4 sentences, and let it speak for itself. What happened to me happens to Black Americans every day, in parks, in stores, in their own driveways. The difference is that I had a title that forced accountability. No one should need a title to be treated with dignity. Justice should not depend on the credentials of the victim. 3 weeks later, Saturday again. The sun sat low over Maple Crest Lane, painting the rooftops in shades of amber and gold. The air smelled like cut grass and warm charcoal. A sprinkler ticked lazily somewhere down the block. A dog barked from a backyard 2 houses over. The kind of sounds that only exist when nothing is wrong. Malcolm Ingram stood at his grill. Same apron, same tongs, same dry rub he'd spent years perfecting. Brown sugar, smoked paprika, garlic powder, a pinch of cayenne. Same backyard he'd built with his own 2 hands. Every stone on that patio, every rose bush along that fence, every square inch of it, still his. Denise was on the patio, arranging plates on the table. She'd made her lemonade again. The ice cubes clinked against the glass pitcher in the warm afternoon breeze. She hummed something soft, something old, something that sounded like a woman who had finally exhaled after holding her breath for 6 months. Maya was in the yard, running, laughing, braids flying behind her like ribbons in the wind. Her cousins chased her around the swing set, screaming and giggling and being exactly what children are supposed to be on a Saturday afternoon. Loud, messy, and completely free. No sirens, no flashing lights, no crackling radios. No voices from the sidewalk telling them they didn't belong. Just family, just home. Just ribs on a grill and lemonade in a pitcher and children playing in the grass. Gerald Eastwood appeared at the side gate. He was carrying a 6-pack in one hand and a folding lawn chair tucked under the other arm. He set the chair down next to the grill, cracked open a can, and looked at Malcolm with a grin that took 10 years off his face. "So, am I finally getting that invite or what?" Malcolm laughed. A real laugh. Deep and warm and unhurried. The kind of laugh that comes from a place that fear had been sitting on for weeks. The first one the audience had heard since this whole story began. "Grab a plate, old man. You earned it." Gerald sat down. They clinked cans. Neither of them said anything for a long moment. They didn't need to. 14 years of friendship doesn't require narration. Sometimes 2 men sitting in silence next to a grill says more than any words ever could. Denise looked past the yard toward the house next door. It was quiet now. The curtains were drawn. The surveillance camera had been taken down. Just a small hole in the siding where the mount used to be. And in the front yard, stuck into the freshly mowed grass, a sign. For sale. Patricia Caldwell was gone. Moved out 9 days after the verdict. No forwarding address, no goodbye, no apology. She left the way she arrived, without ever once knocking on the Ingrams' door. A car pulled up to the curb. A young couple stepped out, black, early 30s, holding hands. A realtor met them on the sidewalk and walked them toward Patricia's front porch. The young husband paused on the walkway. He looked around the street, at the clean sidewalks, at the trimmed hedges, at the kids laughing and running in Malcolm's yard. He turned to the realtor and smiled. "This neighborhood seems really welcoming." Denise watched them from the patio. She didn't say a word. She just reached over and squeezed Malcolm's hand. He squeezed back, held it there for a moment longer than usual. Malcolm looked at his grill, looked at his yard, looked at his home, the one he'd lived in for 14 years and planned to live in for 14 more. He said, to no one in particular, "Best ribs in Charlotte." So here's the thing. Justice showed up in this story. It showed up loud and clear. But it showed up because a federal judge happened to be the one holding the tongs. It shouldn't take a title to be treated like a human being. It shouldn't take a live stream to force accountability. It shouldn't take 1 million views for someone to finally say, that was wrong. The real question isn't whether this kind of thing happens. We already know it does, case after case after case. The real question is, what do we do when we see it? When there's no camera, no live stream, no judge, just a person standing in their own yard being told they don't belong. What do you do? I want to hear your answer. Drop it in the comments. And if this story hit you the way it hit me, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.
Here's the simplest thing I can say. If someone isn't hurting you, leave them alone. A man grilling in his yak isn't a threat. A kid bouncing a ball isn't a crime. If the only reason you're uncomfortable is because they don't look like you, the problem isn't them. The problem is you. But here's a deeper lesson. When someone tries to make you feel like you don't belong in your own home, in your own street, in your own life, don't shrink, don't hide, don't turn the grill off, don't go inside, don't give them that power. You earned your place, you belong there, and no amount of dirty looks, fake photos, or flashing lights can change that. And one more thing, if you see your neighbor going through this, don't just watch from the porch. Speak up. One voice can change everything. One person saying, I know that man who live here, who live in Milan, that was more than 100 apologize after the damage is done. Don't wait. Say something while it still matters. Like, share, and subscribe. Real stories, real justice every week. And remember, your home is yours. Your peace is yours. And nobody gets to take that from you. Nobody.